What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our 2025 Big Ten preseason preview. I got Ty joining me here yet again for another great video, and this is his neck of the woods, kind of 50-50 for me here, so this one will be a little more in depth, but we'll jump into it here, starting with Illinois and a team that a lot of people are high on this year. Their over-under is 8.5. Last year, 10 wins for the first time, and it feels like eternity because this team has really struggled here in recent years, but they're getting a lot back production-wise. 16 returning starters, 50 top 50 in recruiting, and unfortunately, I don't think their year leads to a huge success story for them this year. A lot tougher schedule than I think people realize. Going to Washington, if they can somehow win that game, then I think my mood might change on this Illinois team for the foreseeable future. But if I'm to just look at a schedule and go from there, I think 7-5, 8-4 is probably the best that I can really see this Illinois team performing this year.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of people are high on them. I think they're ranked 12th in the preseason AP poll. But yeah, I agree. The schedule's pretty tough, having to go to Washington, go to Indiana. I have them losing that one. And going to Wisconsin is always tough when you have Brett Bielema as the coach. Remember, he kind of left them high and dry about a decade ago. So that's always a tough road game for Illinois. And then Ohio State at home. I mean, it's a golden opportunity. They lost a lot from last year's national championship team. They're coming to your place. I'm just not ready to pull the trigger there. So unfortunately, I think 7-5, and a lot of Illinois fans would be really disappointed coming off a 10-win season with a lot of returning talent. But I just don't see it this year.
Yeah, then moving to Indiana, I'm in the same boat. I think 7-5 as well. They had a great year last year, but eight returning starters. You're losing a lot of production where you need that production to be consistent. And I just think the conference play is going to get them this year because it's a lot harder this year at Penn State, at Oregon, at Iowa. And I mean, you get Illinois at home, which I have them losing that game. Um, I don't know. I just don't see a lot of for sure pencil in wins as I did last year for this Indiana team. That is concerning for me. I know Kirk Cignetti is a great head coach and all, but I do expect a little step back here in year two under him.
Well, maybe you just didn't Google him because he
I
wins
guess not.
according to himself. But hopefully, Indiana can get through that grinder of a non-conference schedule to start the year. Three really tough ones there, and then getting into conference, they do have not as favorable of a schedule as last year, but it's still pretty doable. Obviously, you got to go to Oregon and Penn State, but outside of that, 10-2 is definitely not out of the question, which could put them in the playoff conversation. I do have them losing at Iowa, though. I think Iowa's offense is going to be improved this year, and they're always going to be good on the defensive side of the ball. So I think 9-3 though is definitely attainable. That Illinois game is a bit of a coin flip, but with that being at home, I'm going with Indiana there. So I think 9-3 would, really validate that 11-win season last year that a lot of people have been questioning.
Yeah, and then talking about that Iowa team, I have them getting off to a hot start. As you can see there, I think they're going to start 6-0 before that Penn State game. And if that's the case, I think a lot of people are going to be maybe they're this year's Indiana, but I think you're going to hold your roll on that one because you're going to see that end of the schedule there, and it's brutal. Penn State, after that game, you get Minnesota, then you're off, and then you get a gauntlet of Oregon at home, at USC, Michigan State, cupcake game, and then at Nebraska to finish the year. If Nebraska's supposed to be good in year three of Matt Rule, then that's going to be a tough game too. So I think Iowa, yet again, another 8-4 season, competitive in the Big Ten until they play the top dogs and just can't figure it out.
Yeah, a lot of people have Iowa as kind of a sleeper this year in the Big Ten, and I see the vision. Obviously, they've won 8, 9, even 10 games over the last decade or so with little to no quarterback play or offense, for that matter. And now they're supposed to be much improved on that side of the ball. We'll see. So a lot of people are high on them. I just think the schedule's not doing them a lot of favors, and having to play both of their rivals on the road in Iowa State and Nebraska, who should both be solid teams this year. I just think it's going to be tough for them. I think Nebraska finally gets it done. I feel like they've been right on the doorstep in that rivalry every year and just never can get the win. I think they finally do it this year, and it's a disappointing 6-6 for Iowa.
Yeah, then moving to Maryland. I don't think there's really much to be said here. A lot of turnover this year. They did recruit surprisingly well, but yeah, first three games, it's all you got for me. Then after that, don't see any success here. I mean, there's pretty much not too much to say here about Maryland.
Yeah, I agree. No returning talent and a sitting duck head coach, in my opinion. I just don't see any wins on the Big Ten schedule this year.
Yeah, but some big wins. Obviously, I'm a little biased here. Both of us are being Michigan fans, but it's going to go two ways for me. If they can go into Oklahoma, I really can see them running the table just because of recent success. But if they go into Oklahoma and lose that game, then I'm kind of where you're sitting there, 9-3, 8-4. I think would be a good year. But for me, with that week two game is going to decide how I'm going to view this Michigan team for the rest of the year. I think if they beat Oklahoma like I predict, they can go into Nebraska early and get them. I think they do lose on the road to USC. I think that's a tough game after USC had that game won last year in the Big House, but just blew it late. So they're definitely looking for some revenge there, a chip on their shoulder heading into this year's game. But till that Ohio State game, I think Michigan breezes through because Washington at home, they struggle away from home. Then all those other teams are kind of bottom of the barrel there in the Big Ten before Ohio State.
Yeah, I think Sharon Moore definitely has this program in the right direction. As a Michigan fan, I'm excited to see, what 2026 and 27 have to offer. He's been recruiting really well. Obviously, Bryce Underwood gets his career started this year. But I think those two road games early in the season, Oklahoma and Nebraska, that's a lot to ask out of a barely 18-year-old quarterback. So I think if they can win one of those, this could definitely be a 10-2 playoff team when it's all said and done. I have them winning that last game on the schedule because they've done it the last 4 years. They did it last year on the road against a national championship team with a walk-on quarterback. So, I had to pick them this year with the game being at home now. So I think 9-3 this year would definitely be a step in the right direction for Michigan, but could definitely see them winning one of those games in the red and getting to 10-2.
And then their rival, Michigan State. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. 6-6, I think, is where this team's going to end up under Jonathan Smith in year two. Aiden Childs is still there. I think, if you look at preseason rankings, I think Michigan State could be the team that is a sleeper heading in. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoff, but I think I'd be more surprised if they finish kind of where you are at 4-8 than they would be at 8-4. Um, I think they are going to get a huge upset. I just didn't know which one to pick, so I didn't pick one. I think they're going to upset one of those teams in red that I picked just because that's just how the Big Ten works. Um, and the only thing is, though, a lot of those games in red are all on the road at Iowa, at Indiana, at Nebraska, at USC. And then, oh, yeah, you get also two home games against your arch rival Michigan and Penn State. So 6-6 was the best I could do. It's pretty much everyone that I haven't mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know if they're quite 4-8 bad, but that schedule was pretty brutal. UCLA at home, I had them winning, and then I ended up. I think I had UCLA originally at 3-9. And I was like, with Nico, I feel like they're better than that, so I changed that to a loss. And outside of that, it's just hard to find a lot of wins there in Big Ten play. And watch out for that Week 1 matchup. My Broncos are coming ready. They're going to be hungry this year. 18-point spread is quite disrespectful, so watch out for that Week 1 matchup. But outside of that, the schedule's just too tough, and I think it's another year without a bowl game here for Michigan State.
Then moving to Minnesota, I think another mediocre year under PJ Fleck. Won't get fired, but he's not going to get a raise. And he's been kind of what Minnesota wants, I guess you could say, because he hasn't really led them to conference championship appearance. He hasn't really done really bad, but he's kept them relevant enough where we're still talking about them and giving them credit. So I think 6-6, they're over under 7.5. Now it could swing to 8-4 like it has done in recent years if they do get an upset and take care of business at home. Like if they, I predict them to lose Michigan State and Wisconsin, but if those teams struggle out of the gates, that's probably an 8-4 year for Minnesota. They'll beat Michigan State and Wisconsin. But just another year of probably 4-4, 3-5 in conference play.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Big Ten going to one singular division definitely hurt Minnesota. They were winning 8 or 9 games every year out in the West with a more favorable schedule. And then the NIL era is definitely not doing them any favors. They just don't really have the funding to keep up with the recruiting of the rest of the conference. So PJ Fleck still doing a great job. He's doing all he can with limited resources, but I think it's going to start to catch up to them this year. But I think there's a lot of losses I have here that could be flipped the other way. At Cal, Nebraska at home, Wisconsin at home. If those all go the other way, you're looking at 9-3. So I think this team, I think it's going to come down to how well they can perform in one score games. I think they'll have a lot of those. But unfortunately, I have them dropping most of them and going 6-6.
Moving to Nebraska, two teams that we have in our playoff. I'll say that right now. I'll just say it right now. If you just look at the schedule, if you look at the records, you can probably assume that they're going to be in our final 12. 10-2 is what I got for them. Outside of the Michigan and Penn State games, it's hard for me to imagine they lose another under year 3 of Matt Rule because we know how that goes. Every year he's got 10 or more wins. Now, maybe they'll finish 9-3 and win a bowl game and get 10 wins, but regardless, they're going to at least get 10 wins. So if there's any over under that I would encourage you to bet on, it would be this one for Nebraska. Because even if they finish 8-4, I think you could chalk up the losses to USC and Iowa. I think would be those two other losses that I think they could take. They still finished 8-4 and a good season there for Nebraska. And Dylan Raiola has 1 year under his belt now. They were 1-5 in one score games last year. You flip that, they were 11-1. They could have been last year's Indiana. So who knows with this Nebraska team? I think on paper they're due for that big jump because you can see their top 20 recruiting class at Nebraska. Hopefully Matt Rule is the guy that can take this team to the promised land and get this, historic program back on track.
Yeah, before you laugh at the records, just start looking at their schedule. They are this year's Indiana, in my opinion. The similarities are kind of crazy, honestly. Though I have them being 10-0 going into a probably top five road matchup, just like Indiana was last year. And at that point, it's just don't get blown out and you're fine. So I think Michigan at home, USC at home, like you said, both definitely could go the other way. But I just think Nebraska finally turns a corner this year. It's been probably 15 years since they've won 10 games, but I think they finally get it done this year. And yeah, if they're 11-1, they're a playoff team. There's no way you could keep an 11-1 Big Ten team out of the playoff.
And then moving to a team you definitely won't see in a playoff anytime here um, is Nebraska. 2 wins out of conference and struggle everywhere else. I mean, I think they're even going to lose to Tulane on the road. Obviously, you do as well. But and obviously this year the big news for them is Pat Fitzgerald settled his lawsuit there for firing him for no really reason. And $120 million lawsuit. So that's going to dig into those NIL funds a little bit as well. So nothing is going right for this Northwestern program here, except that they got a new stadium. That's the only good
Yeah.
thing that they got. So paying towards a new stadium, paying your old head coach, I think it's going to be quite a while before we see this Northwestern team even reach a bowl game.
Yeah, I think Pat Fitzgerald was one of the more underrated coaches in the country. He had this team punching way above their weight for a decade plus, and I think that's going to start to show. It already did last year, and you're just going to see more of it this year. A tough schedule. Not that it really matters because this team just doesn't have the talent to compete in the conference this year. I think they get Purdue at home for their one Big Ten win. But yeah, I think 3-9 is the final record and not a lot to look forward to in the future.
And then you flip the script. We both got them going 11-1 and both got them losing to obviously our team in Michigan. Now, I think I did see a stat where heading into this week, you'll see it on the week 1 picks too. A defending champion starting a true freshman quarterback week 1 in a ranked matchup is 0-18 all time. And I think that changes here. Julian Saiyan, I think, can be the savior. A lot of people are calling him Super Saiyan for all you Dragon Ball Z fans out there. That's kind of what his nickname's going by this year. And I think he's going to show it week 1. As long as you can be a game manager and just throw it up there for you know who, um, they're going to just take care of business until that Penn State game, I think, is going to be their first toughest challenge outside of Texas, obviously, after week 1. But that Washington game could get overlooked, like kind of I'm doing right now. And I think they could go in there and maybe stumble early on in conference play because it is their first conference game. But regardless, I really don't see this team losing two or three or more games. I think 10-2 is at worst for this Ohio State team, and yet again another chance at another national championship.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule here for Ohio State. I could definitely see them dropping one of those three road games. You got Washington, Illinois, Wisconsin in a 4 week stretch, all tough places to play against pretty solid teams going into this season. But I just think Ohio State, as much as I, can't stand them, they definitely deserve the benefit of the doubt. They haven't won fewer than 11 games I think in the past decade. So you got to give them at least the benefit of the doubt until they show otherwise. I think they get by Texas in a really close game. With Penn State being at home, I do think they get that one. And are we predicting the championship games right now?
No, no, no.
Okay. Well, I think they get to the championship game. Stay tuned for that. But I think they do go 11-1 with that loss at Michigan. If you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt because of what they've shown in years past, you also got to go with Michigan because it's been four in a row in that series.
Yeah, and then moving to a team I think that's going to be also competing for Big Ten championship. And you can see I have them going 11-1 with one conference loss, and they're still not going to the Big Ten championship due to tiebreakers. Um, Oregon, they're going to be, I think, better than they were last year, which is kind of crazy to say. I know you lose Tez Johnson, I know you lose Dylan Gabriel, so on and so forth. But Dante Moore, I think, is ready to take the helm. He originally committed to Oregon, left to go to UCLA for a year. Then he came back, and now he is took a year under Gabriel, and then now he's the starter. So Dan Lanning finally got his guy to just stay calm, learn, and be the starter of a team that is, a top five team in the nation right now. Number three in recruiting rankings coming into the year. So they got some good guys coming in. And at Penn State, for me, until that game at Washington, is kind of their only game I can really see them maybe slipping up on. I guess you could throw the at Iowa game because it is late in the year in November. That could be a tough challenge depending where Iowa's at. But Oregon, yet again, I think is on track for maybe a Big Ten championship appearance, definitely a playoff appearance, and another crack at it.
Yeah, I think Oregon takes just a slight step back this year. I think they get upset by Washington on the road in that last game. That's a big rivalry, underrated rivalry. And I think Washington has much improved this year, as you'll see later on here. So I think they drop that one. And the Penn State game is confirmed. It's a night game, it is the whiteout. So I had to go Penn State there. That's the toughest environment in college football, in my opinion, playing there in the night whiteout game. So I think they dropped that. Outside of that, it's hard to find another loss on this schedule. At Iowa is going to be tough, but I think they get out of there with a win, and they get Indiana at home. So I think 10-2, anything less than that would be pretty surprising here for Oregon.
Yeah, Penn State in the same boat here. I think both of us, as you can see there, have them going to the Big Ten championship game. So I got Michigan, Penn State in the Big Ten championship. Obviously, you have Penn State, Ohio State, a rematch. We both have them losing the same game to Ohio State on the road. Drew Aller and James Franklin, it has to be this year. You have to win the big one. And as you can see here, their big one is Oregon at home. In the whiteout game, they're finally going to get a huge road or huge victory against, at that time, probably an AP top three team. They should win out to that point. And then I don't be surprised if Penn State is actually the number one team in the country at some point this year, until that Ohio State game. Even if they lose that, I still could see them number one in the country, even after with them winning out and going to the Big Ten championship. We're finally bought into the hype because you and me have been not bought in the last few years, and it's shown. And it's kind of worked in our favor, except last year, obviously, they played well to get to the playoff, had two cupcake playoff games, I guess you could say. SMU and Boise. I mean, you finally get to the Final Four, and then just didn't really we just didn't really see what I thought the Penn State team we thought we would see there against Notre Dame. But regardless, they're going to put themselves back into a position where they can compete and contend for another national title.
Yeah, I think Penn State is very similar to 2023 Michigan, where maybe the future, the very next year, doesn't look as promising, but you have everyone coming back, and it's, do or die, basically. It's if not now, then when. And with Penn State, they've obviously struggled to get over the hump in, top five matchups. Last year, they had an huge opportunity in front of them to get past Notre Dame and compete for a national championship. They couldn't get it done. So I think this year it's kind of now or never for James Franklin. I think if you drop the Ohio State game, a lot of people are going to start writing Penn State off, drawing the same narratives. But I think it'd be huge for them to get that rematch in the Big Ten championship. And if they could win that game, I think that'd be a huge weight off their shoulders going into the playoff, and maybe to make a run for a national championship. So I think expectations are very high, but for good reason, and they go 11-1.
Yeah, then Purdue, complete opposite of the spectrum here. 3-9, their win at Northwestern. Don't even be surprised if they lose to Ball State or Southern Illinois because this team is going to be really bad. You can see there only one returning starter. They're the only team in the Power Four with one returning starter. I don't even know who it is, if I'm gonna be honest. That tells you how much I need to know about Purdue this year. They're going to be historically bad. If you're 1-11 the year before and you're over under still at 3.5 the next year, this program is going nowhere fast, and I expect it to continue this year.
Yeah, this is similar to Northwestern. Jeff Brom had this program punching way above its weight for a few years there. Losing him really hurt. And then obviously Ryan Walters was just kind of a dud of a hire out of Illinois and kind of left this program in shambles. I think Barry Odom's a good hire for Purdue, but it's going to be a few years before he can really turn this around. Because, like you said, one returning starter and recruited very poorly in the offseason. So I don't see any wins outside of those first two games. I think at Northwestern and then Rutgers at home, got to win one of those two, or it's going to be 0-9 in the Big Ten. So I think it's going to be a very long 2-10 season, but that's an improvement from last year. So at least it's something.
And then Rutgers, they were blessed to get 6 wins last year and seven, obviously after the bowl game win. But I don't see them having the same success this year. It's a little tougher schedule in the Big Ten. Iowa at Minnesota, at Washington, Oregon at home, at Illinois, at Ohio State, Penn State. Um, you give them the benefit of the doubt winning against Ohio and Miami of Ohio, but I think Ohio's the best team in the MAC and Miami of Ohio is the second best team in the MAC. And I think both of those teams are gonna come in there. You're gonna pay them probably a good chunk of change to come in there and lose. And I think that's just going to be the story. Greg Schiano's probably gone um, halfway through the season. I think that's the case. What's going to happen to this Rutgers team, and it's just going to get blown up in the offseason.
I think it's a tough situation for Rutgers. I don't think Schiano's necessarily a bad coach, but it's similar to Minnesota where they just don't have any resources. They don't have the money. So it's like how many 5-7 seasons can you really tolerate before you move on to somebody new? That'll be interesting to see. Because I think, it's going to be hard for them to win more than 5 games this year with that schedule and the low level of talent that they have. You got 3 of your last 4 games at Illinois, at Ohio State, Penn State at home. That's pretty brutal right there. So I think 5-7 for Rutgers, and until they invest more into this sport, I don't see them, having much more success than this in the future.
Yeah, and UCLA, I think that's the same thing for me too. I think this team is going to struggle. I don't care that they added Nico Imaliava. It doesn't really matter to me. I think this team is going to be very bad in the Big Ten. They're not going to transition well like Oregon and Washington have. And this team should just go join the Pac-12 again, along with Stanford, and probably Cal too. Just go back. None of these conferences need you. You're just going to be at the bottom. Unfortunately, that's where I see UCLA being for the foreseeable future in the Big Ten. There's too many big dogs, and this team just can't compete right now, even against USC recruiting wise with Lincoln Riley. This team is just unfortunately bottom of the barrel, at least in football in this conference.
Yeah, as a program, I feel like UCLA should be a lot more competitive and they should be recruiting a lot better than they have been. It is big that they brought in Nico, at least solved a little bit of the quarterback question, but even at head coach, I'm not sure Deshaun Foster is really the guy for the future of this program. This year, I originally had him 3-9, thought that was a little, too low. Obviously, you didn't, but I did come back and switch it. I had them beat UNLV and Michigan State. So other than that, everything is the same here. Although I could definitely see them losing both of those games. I'm just not sure. It's another program where not only are they going to have a rough year, I'm not quite sure there's a ton to look forward to over the next 2 or 3 years. So a lot of question marks here for UCLA.
Yeah, and on the flip side, both of us, same exact schedule, same exact wins and losses for USC. I think this team is going to either be just in the playoff or just miss out. End of the day, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska, and at Oregon are going to be your three toughest games, and I guess their fourth toughest would be either Michigan or at Illinois. I think they're going to win at least two of those five games that I just mentioned. And if they can get three of those five, then I think they're in the playoff. And they're the team to watch for because maybe this is the year where there is a 9-3 team that makes the college football playoff. And it could be that USC team or it could be a team from the SEC just because there's going to be a ton of them this year.
Another make or break year with this program for a head coach. I think if they don't hit that over, which is only 7.5, if they can't hit that, then Lincoln Riley's gone. I think back-to-back 7-win seasons with such high expectations when he was hired, I think that would be probably the nail in the coffin for him at USC. And it's just been the same story year in and year out. They just can't figure out the defensive side of the ball, and it has killed them over the last 2 years with back-to-back 7-win seasons. So I think they do improve this year on that side. Alex Grinch is out of there. I think that's going to help things a lot. I think they get a huge boost by beating Illinois on the road, coming back home, beating Michigan. So I think 9-3, while it's still not quite what USC fans had in mind when Lincoln Riley was hired, I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and Washington is that other team that I think you and me both see that could be that playoff crasher or even Big Ten championship crasher. Both of us have them losing to Ohio State and Michigan. I have them losing to Oregon at home. You have them losing to Wisconsin on the road. Um, the Illinois game looms large. I think it is at home, so they do get the benefit of the doubt there. But if they can somehow flip one of my reds to a green, it's hard for me for them not to make the playoff. Even if they don't make the Big Ten championship, it's hard for me to not put them in to the playoff. Washington, I think they've won like 29 out of their last 30 games at home, or they're behind Georgia for the longest winning streak in college football at home. I think Georgia's at like 48, and then Washington's either at the high 20s or low 30s. So that week 5 game against Ohio State, it'll be tested, and I think that's where I think they're going to finally lose at home. And it could be two times in the year because I have them losing at Oregon at the end of the year. But Washington is in prime position here to really make some noise after, losing DeBoer a year ago. This team is reloaded and reborn, I guess you could say, in a new perspective. In Washington, why not? Why can't they, somehow surprise some people here in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a bounce back year for Washington. Rough 2024, but it was similar to Michigan coming off playing in the national championship, and they lost their head coach, lost their first round quarterback, lost all their stud wide receivers. So they had a lot to replace last year. I think, things are a little more stable going into 2025. I do think Jed Fish is a very good head coach, and I think that's going to show this year. Those three losses, if they could get out of Wisconsin, I have them losing that. But if they could get out of there with a win and then pull that upset over Oregon to end the season, they could definitely be a playoff team. So I think they'll be right on the edge, but miss it. But I think 9-3 would be a very good step for Washington.
And then the last team in the Big Ten is Wisconsin. 6-6 yet again for me. This team is over under. It feels like every year is at 5-5 under Luke Fickell. And unfortunately, it's just not going to translate to anything more. Kind of like we've mentioned for Minnesota, the schedule's tough. I mean, that 4-week stretch in between buys is at Michigan, Iowa, OSU at home, and at Oregon. And then you come off of that bye and you get Washington at home, who's probably going to be on fire at that point in the season, at Indiana, Illinois at home. I mean, that is a brutal 8-game stretch there. And oh, yeah, we haven't even mentioned you go to Alabama week 3. Um, I don't know. I just can't see Wisconsin even getting more than 6 wins. I would be shocked if they finished 7-5 or better. But I wouldn't even be shocked if they finished 4-8 this year. So really, Wisconsin, unfortunately, they're just not going to be able to get it done this year with this schedule.
Yeah, definitely a tough schedule. And similar to USC, Wisconsin thought they made a home run hire with Luke Fickell, and it just hasn't quite worked out that way yet. How many losses can they tolerate this year for him to keep his job going into 2026? That'll be interesting. I have him going 7-5, which I think will be enough for him to stay around, maybe build a little momentum. But I mean, if you look at those five losses, which one of those are they going to win is the question. So I think 7-5 could be argued to even be their ceiling going into this season. I think they do improve a little bit, but not enough to win any of those tough games.
And that's going to be it for our Big Ten preseason preview. As always, go check out our other videos on the other conferences that we are breaking down as well. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.